to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. Today's show is brought to you by UTAS Jewelry. Stay beautiful, stay you. And we're joined today, if I can talk, by guest Paul DeBlassie.
That's right.
Awesome. I tried not to butcher your name too much. Now, you have several books out, and your most recent is Goddess of Everything. So how do we get to Goddess of Everything?
Best way is Amazon. That's
No. I mean, how did you get to writing it?
yeah. Well, I've been writing. I'm a psychologist and writer, and I've been writing for 40 years. Been writing and published, and in the past 15 years or so, I've switched to fiction, and so I write psychological fiction. And the genre is metaphysical. So I write books about love, about life, and about the whole realm of the unconscious mind. Because my specialty is in treating patients in intensive psychotherapy and treating their unconscious mind. And my books delve into that.
Well, it's always good to pair what we do for a living into our books, even if it's in a fictional way, because then we can explore it and teach people without telling them we're teaching them.
Right, exactly. So in each of my novels, beginning with The Unholy, which is my first novel, and then going on into Goddess of the Wild Thing, and then the latest one, A Goddess of Everything, there is a healer, and the healer has very in-depth knowledge of the unconscious mind, or what's often called in the stories the spiritual world. And they deal with dreams, they deal with synchronous happenings, and they deal with helping individuals to learn that healing is about making effective choices in life. And it's played out in thriller form, the way life is. Our lives are dramatic.
How much more dramatic can you get than 2020?
Right.
That's the entire world at that point.
Exactly.
So if we just look at that, and every choice that we make is do or die, basically, from businesses to personal to family, everything is just right there.
It's just right there. Every day in so many ways is a cutting edge. That's why writing stories, especially in metaphysical stories, it gets what's real and what's happening, and it just pops it out. What happens in your daily life and my daily life, it pops it out in dramatic form. You have dreams, I have dreams every night when we sleep. We dream 7-8 times. So the stories, for instance, always go in to the protagonist's conflict. And when they go to sleep, they have dreams, and the dreams oftentimes are reflecting in very, very intense ways what they have to do in life in order to make it through their struggles. And those can be challenging decisions, and they have to wonder, they have to wrestle with, can they make the decisions that are necessary to live their lives well? Exactly. And it's tricky, just like it is for all of us. There's no guarantees.
No, if you go into the world, our dreams, as we talk to people, our dreams are our unconscious mind telling us we need to change something.
Yes.
And it's always there. It could be something minor, it could be a major change, it could be, what are you thinking?
Right.
It's always there. If we actually dive into our dreams, we can find a path to succeed or be happier.
Right. And in Goddess of Everything, for instance, a young man is caught in a very vicious struggle between love for one person and love for another. And his dreams are saying, be careful, what appears to be is not actually what is. And the dreams keep warning him, and he can't make out clearly who the dream is referring to, because many times dreams are like oracles. They don't spoon feed us.
Right.
Okay? They give us little whispers. They give us little nudges, But then ultimately we have to figure things out with a little help from the unconscious mind or the
Mhm.
spiritual world. To depth psychology, it's the same thing. The unconscious world, the unconscious mind is a contemporary version of what ancients, what mystics for hundreds of years have referred to as the spiritual world. So we get these little hints, these little guesses, and it's helpful. It's very helpful when an oracle speaks to us every evening. And in Goddess of Everything, he has to wrestle and he needs the help of one person. And this one person is his wife. And she can see it, but
Mhm.
he can't.
Mhm.
He can't. He's the one in the midst of everything. She can see it clearly, but then he's the one that has to come to grips with the profound nature of what in essence is a very bad influence in his life. And then he has to decide, what is he going to do about it?
I mean, you go into the metaphysics, and you did this very well in the series. You intertwined everything. But we bring it back to people for just a second. We
Yeah.
see this because we have those negative influences in our lives. They could be a relative, they could be a family member, they could be a best friend. And then you have the positive influences as well. So our mind tells us what we can or cannot do, but at the same time, when we're in the middle of it, we don't always see the answer as clearly as those around us. So you did this very well in your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's hard because you're making an excellent point. When we're living it through, it's not clear. And so we need time.
Mhm.
And what I see in my practice with my patients and dealing with day-to-day problems, I specialize in trauma care. I've been treating patients for 40 years, and I've been treating patients long-term, and they've suffered very tough things in childhood. And they can see that there are relationships that need to be changed. Sometimes it's so bad that they need to let go of the relationships, but
Mhm.
they can't just do that overnight, or they
No.
can't make the changes overnight. It takes time. And sometimes they decide that they can't make the changes and they're willing to live with the suffering. And then that's what they decide. They're empowered to do that.
Right.
Or they decide, I can't live with this. I cannot live a life like this. And but it takes some time because, as you're saying, Melissa, it's hard for us when we're the one in the middle of the storm.
Mhm.
People can look on from the sidelines and say, oh, if she or he had just do this. But when we're the ones in the middle of it, then it's very difficult. And each of my books says, this is what it's like being in the middle of the storm. Do you recognize this character? Have you ever felt this way before?
Mhm. I mean, being in your field of psychiatry in metaphysics, that is a perfect entrance because it draws your readers from, hey, I'm doing the same thing in my life. This is where fiction meets reality, and we need it because we're teaching without teaching.
Right, we're teaching without teaching. You know, I noticed that on Amazon with Goddess of Everything, they categorized this book and they recategorized my other two, along with metaphysical fiction, as magical realism. And I sort of like that because all of reality is pretty magical,
Hmm.
okay? And what we go through is real stuff that affects us in profound ways. And there are influences that are really mind-blowing, that turn the course of events for us, and they're in a very real sense magical. So when we see what we're going through taking place in a story, by reading books
Hmm.
in metaphysical fiction, psychological thrillers, supernatural stories, it's really pretty simple. You know, it's nothing really pie in the sky or too far-fetched if we understand it symbolically.
Right.
Okay. This stuff really happens. It's the stuff that you dream of every night. When those weird occurrences take place, we can call them supernatural. We can call them, boy, I just dreamt about that person and
Or
they showed
deja
up
vu.
today. And they showed up today. Could that be something supernatural? Or could it be my unconscious mind saying, really pay attention? So when I write about supernatural things, magical realism, as Amazon has said, it's the magic that takes place every day in our life that's meant to help us. If we're willing to listen and we're willing to consider that something's at work that's trying to help me.
I love that message. I mean, I deal with metaphysics myself, so I understand the realism and what taking it to the fictional to teach the reality. But
Yeah. Mhm.
with this series, are you making another book, or did you
Yes.
end it?
Well, actually, this series, as it is, it's really I like what Philip Pullman in his Dark Materials. It's an HBO series now, but he wrote his books, The Dark Materials, and he was asked, "Is this a series?" And he says, "My books aren't prequels, sequels, they're equals." You know, so the Unholy, Goddess of the Wild Thing, and Goddess of Everything are equals.
Mhm.
They're each standalone novels, but they each relate to one another. And in this land of this mysterious land of Aslan, which is New Mexico, now I'll be moving into a different series. And it takes place specifically and literally, it's called New Mexico, and it's Santa Fe. It takes place in Santa Fe, and the series is called Seer. And it's each story,
Okay.
and the seer is one who can look into the unconscious mind, the spiritual world, and help people as a result. And this is Dr. Ernesto de la Tierra, and he is a transpersonal psychologist in Santa Fe. And people from all over the world consult with him. And in the first novel, it is, and I'm in the midst of writing it right now, it's Seer, the case of the man who lost his soul. And that is the first novel in the series that will be entitled Seer. So,
That is a catchy title. I like
yes,
that.
yes. It's one of my go-to classic writers in supernatural fiction, metaphysical thrillers is Algernon Blackwood.
Mhm.
Um, and he wrote the John Silence stories. And Dr. John Silence was a psychic doctor. He was a MD who specialized only in taking patients with psychic disorders. So supernatural occurrences were taking place in their life and depressing them. And for 30, 40 years now, Algernon's stories of John Silence, Dr. John Silence, have really been a source of inspiration. And so I finished up Goddess of Everything, Goddess of the Wild Thing, and the Unholy. And Algernon whispered in my right ear, going into my cortex, and helping me
Mhm.
to sort of logically sort this through. And Arthur Mackin in my left ear, and helping to inspire me further, and saying it's time to write Seer, about an individual who is an oracle, really, this transpersonal psychologist, and his first patient, the case of the man who lost his soul.
That
So,
is wonderful.
and each book in the series will be a different case. Freud did a similar thing
Mhm.
with the case of Anna O and the case of the Wolf Man. And so there's
Yeah, it's
precedent.
not a sequel at that point. It's a
Yeah,
series, no doubt, but it's not a prequel. It's not a sequel. It's a series, a true
it is a
series.
series. That's right. It is a series. Each one will build on the other. And yeah, and Ernesto de la Tierra is a transpersonal psychologist practicing transpersonal psychology right off the Santa Fe Plaza, and people come there from around the world to consult with him. And here we have The Case of the Man Who Lost His Soul. It's going to take a year and a half because each book takes me about 2 years.
Oh, of course. I mean, writing a book is not easy. You can
No,
take
it's not.
you can take a pure fiction book, rush through it, and have it out in 30 days. There are authors that can do it, and I applaud you if you can. I've had books that I've taken 3 to 4 years to write. So it's not an easy thing. I have authors that I have been on the shows that's taken 10 years to write one book.
Right, exactly. And then, I can, by the time I've finished writing, I've actually rewritten the book probably 20, 25 times. I've edited it so many times. I'm word blind. So by the time I'm really finished with it, I'm then ready to send it off to my team of professional editors. So then I have the team of developmental editors, copy editors, and final proof editors. And by the time that's all done, then we're ready to go.
And you just hit on something. This is something that most of our authors on here don't mention to our readers, and they don't understand. When we say we're doing edits, it's not just one edit for spelling or grammar. There's 3 or 4 different editors looking at your book for different reasons.
Exactly. 3 or 4 different editors. And then I have at least 3 or 4 different beta readers who read the book after the professional editors are finished. And they say, well, how about this, or how about this, or how about this? Then my main editor filters through it and says, Paul, let's reconsider this and this and this. So I do that. Then my general editor finishes, and then I take a deep breath, and then I watch to see my dreams. And then they speak to me and they say, it's ready. Or they say, hold off a little bit longer. And then once I get the go ahead, then they're ready to go.
Yeah, we don't do, when you have a background in metaphysics, we listen to our dreams very closely.
Yes.
And we do not do anything in our daily lives without consulting our dreams first.
Oh, that's right. Because there's something very fundamental, right, Melissa? And I'm sure you'll agree with me that dreams never lie.
No, they don't.
They're spot on. They are spot on. So once I get a green light, I go. If I don't go anywhere.
Yeah, I have my team that I work with. They go, you just jump at things. No, I didn't jump. My dream told me to do it, and I have to listen to the dream.
Right. You want to know something here. You and I have been in contact for maybe about a year now, and we were going to have a show before, and my dream said, hold off, it's a little premature. And so just recently, and you were very kind, and you said, Paul, I understand, we can reschedule. And so I made note of that. And about 2 weeks ago, I got an open door, and I contacted you.
You booked
and you
the
said,
show.
perfect, let's go with it. And there we go. But yeah, because I regard book PR as spiritual practice. And it has to proceed from the inside out, and it has to be a heartfelt thing. I don't want to just get on the road and just do this,
You can't go, you can't just sign with a PR person. You can't just go on radio shows and this one and that one, not doing your research, not listening to dreams, because you're going to have this gut feeling it's not the right fit for you. I've had people come on the show. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to anyone, basically. But at the same time, I'm like, why come on this show? There's 3 or 4 other shows that's a better fit for you. Did you listen to yourself before you came on here?
Right. And I had a real clear feeling about you and about your show. And I have to feel that sense of being in sync with the show. Because there are a lot of shows out there. But when I have that feeling and it clicks, it's just like when we understand a dream. There's an emotional resonance. It really clicks. I always tell my patients, it's helpful, it's positive, and it's very practical. Okay. So when all those things line up and I feel like, this is going to be a good show, and it feels very positive. It's in sync with what I'm doing, and it's
And it's
practical. It makes
organic.
sense.
You
It's
can't,
organic. I love that
yeah,
word. Yes.
it's not just, oh, here's a list of questions. So we're going to
Mhm.
go through this list of questions and talk about the book. It's so boring when you do that. If you have an organic conversation and you're both pulled to the same metaphysic world, or you're pulled to the same type of mindset, it's going to be
Yes.
a great show.
It is. You know, Melissa, can I dovetail on that just briefly? I
Please.
love that word in Goddess of Everything, and in each of the novels. That I love just sort of spinning off on that word for just a second, because you see terrible things that these individuals are going through. Because as a story builds with a thriller, they hit challenge after challenge, and each one is bigger and each one is more decisive, and you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes it's so confusing for the person, and you can see it. But at the end, you can see and you understand that after all the confusion, there was something very organic at work. There was a mysterious, very mysterious force at work, and there was indeed a method to the madness.
Yeah,
And it was quite organic.
I say that.
After the fact, we see that, you know?
Yes. I try when I get into these situations in my personal life where I just feel stuck or there's mounting complications. I'm like, let's take a step back. Let's see if we can see past it
Mhm.
to find the way out. And this is what some of your characters have done, because otherwise you don't get out of the turmoil. You have to find a way out.
Yes, you do have to find a way out. And ultimately, that's what we're looking for, right?
Mhm.
We're trying to find a way out. And sometimes the tunnel that we're going through is so dark, we think that there's no end in sight. There's
Mhm.
just, I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen in COVID, right?
Right.
I mean, we didn't know. I was just talking with a patient yesterday, and we weren't laughing, but we were more lighthearted than we were a year ago
Mhm.
when we had to close down, you know. And I do all virtual therapy now. You know, I don't do any office therapy, and it's been a smooth transition for all of my patients, fortunately. But we were saying we didn't know if the world was going to be around a year ago.
Right.
Were we going to be alive, you
Mhm.
know? And what's going to happen in in our own metaphysical thriller, in our own story?
Mhm.
That's the drama that takes place in our everyday life. And it's been COVID for us this year, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I mean, we always just go through drama, interpersonal drama or global drama. But at the
Mhm.
same time, we have to take a step back, look at it. There's going to be a light somewhere. We just have to find it.
That's right. Do you want me to tell you something sort of interesting? It's interesting to me, and
Please,
it's been
please.
helpful, I believe, to my patients. Speaking of COVID and speaking of dreams and metaphysics and stories, the stories that's our life. 1 month before COVID really hit, which was about in February of last year, because as I believe we closed down here in the States about the second week of March last year,
Mhm.
and about the first part of February, I had a very strong dream. It was a numinous dream, and it was Mother Nature. She appeared in my dream and she said, "Do not worry, all will be well, but I must reset things."
Mhm. I
Okay.
had a very similar dream in January.
Oh, you did?
And
Yeah.
I was so upset by it because my boyfriend at the time was traveling. I'm like, do not go to California. Do not leave your house. Stay home. Just stay there. And I was telling him this every day. He's like, babe, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm like, no, you're not. Stay home.
Yeah, yeah, right. And fortunately, the dream that I had has been helpful with patients, it's been helpful with me, with family, I believe, because I said, listen, this all looks really bleak, but I think we're going to make it through.
Mhm.
And I knew that Mother Nature was at work,
Yeah.
that there's been a complete reset for us in the way that we live, in the
Mhm.
way that we feel about life, and the way that we appreciate each other and life, and have made real changes. We've had to make changes.
We we as a society, we as a human race have had to make tremendous changes in our daily activities, but those changes will actually help everyone eventually.
Exactly. You know, in the story, and each of the stories, but in Goddess of Everything, what does happen at the end, and I'm not going to say what happens at the end of the
Mhm.
story, but what does happen at the end, although very, very shocking, very shocking. I mean, look at the front page of or the front cover of the book. It's a shocking cover. Can I show it real quick?
Please.
Yeah, this is the front cover of the book.
Yeah.
Okay. That takes us to the very last scene of the book. Okay. It's shocking, but it changes everything. And it changes everything in a wondrous way that leaves a shock. But in the end, things shift and transform. I'm not going to say how, but
Mhm.
this year, boy,
Right.
it's really caused us to rethink and
It
how
is.
we were living,
Mhm.
and you know, we'll remember this for the rest of our lives.
Yes, we will, and our children remember it. It'll be like the people who had lived through the 1912 plague, you know, the influenza. It
Yes,
was
yes.
1912. They relived it, and they were able to help prepare us for now, or their children were, their
Exactly.
grandchildren were.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And I was just talking to my son, where we were talking to our son this morning in New York, and he's been there with his family, lives in Brooklyn, works in Manhattan, and how frightening that's been. And we were saying, how are they getting back, and is the city getting back? And he said it's really not. It's really not. It's rough. It's rough. You know, things are taking time, and it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the
No,
same.
it's not.
Everything's people have gone virtual, businesses have gone virtual.
Mhm.
Office space is going to be utilized probably at 40%, 50% of what it used to be, because
Right,
everything has changed. Everything
right.
is changed.
Or you're gonna have the same amount of people, but larger offices to be more spread out. It's not going to be the same 8 by 8 square that we're accustomed to.
Right,
It's going to be a 16 by 16 square or something like that, you
right,
know?
right. Because it's been a powerful change. I think it's ultimately going to be for the better, like in the stories, to ultimately everything that we can survive helps us to be better and our lives to
That's
be
true.
better.
That is
The
true.
key is we got to survive it.
That is the key to everything.
Oh, excuse me. Let me turn this off on my phone. There we go.
It's
I'm,
okay.
I'm so
So
sorry.
it's fine. We have interruptions. This is what happens when we do things from home. We have the phones, we have the kids, we have the dogs. So
Yes.
it happens. I mean, you can't have a meeting nowadays without one of the three happening.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
But
So,
we are almost out of time. So where can our listeners and our viewers find you?
and you can find me on Paul DeBlassie III.com, and you can go to Paul DeBlassie the Third Amazon. You can find me there, and Twitter, Paul DeBlassie the Third on Twitter. And
And
I
you
love
made it so easy. You kept the
good.
same name across everything. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's right. That's great.
A lot of times we can't do that.
Yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me. Any readers want to check with me, I'd be glad to hear from you. And it's pdeblassie@gmail.com too, if you want to send me a little note. That's great.
And all for our viewers and our listeners, if you check in the comment section, all the links are below there for you.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Melissa.
So for all of our listeners and our viewers, happy reading. And Paul, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Melissa, thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been wonderful.
And we'll talk to everyone next time. Thank you.